We're often talking about confusion that people have in the difference between temporary or permanent residence, citizenship, and tax residence. And today, I have a comment that someone left about golden visas and how you can use a golden visa to reduce your taxes. But as I'll explain, it's not just so easy as obtaining a golden visa and slashing your tax bill. I'm going to share the mistake that you should avoid right now. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors, also known as the evil rich. We help them reduce their taxes legally, get second passports, invest overseas, all the ways that they can diversify internationally to go where you're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. Now, a good friend of mine, Scott Melker, they call him the Wolf of all streets. He was posting on social media, and I got dragged in because he was saying, you got to look at Nomad Capitalist. And someone said, leave and don't pay the taxes. Plenty of good places to live in the world and still thrive. Golden visas have lots of great advantages for expats. And I wanted to address this comment on a couple of fronts. Obviously, you know me as the goody two-shoes of the offshore world. I'm not going to tell you just to leave and don't pay the taxes, because what we're seeing, in addition to you just don't want the hassles in your life, tax authorities around the world are cracking down on all sorts of things. Elizabeth Warren wants to increase by 160,000% the amount of enforcement in the IRS. Tax authorities are going after people with crypto. Sometimes it might take them years to find you, but they do find people. And so I don't want you just to leave and not pay the taxes. I want you to figure out how to make a clean break legally from your country. There may be an exit tax. There may not be if you're lucky. And just get out, take your crypto, take your assets, take your business, find a way to legally move that outside of your current system to a tax-friendly place, move yourself to a tax-friendly place, and basically make sure that you're not going to be looking behind your shoulder for the next 5 or 10 years, hoping that they don't find you. So I'm going to take issue with saying leave and don't pay the taxes. But I wanted to speak to this point because there are lots of good places to live in the world and still thrive. That's what we talk about here. You don't have to stay in the United States or Australia or any of these legacy brand countries that claim that they give you a lot more than they do. But the comment that stood out to me was golden visas still have lots of great advantages for expats. And so I wanted to, in the context of a tax conversation, address that. Now, what is a golden visa? It is a term initially used by Portugal and then Spain, basically for an investor visa. So there are numerous ways to get a residence permit. You could go and open a bank account somewhere. You could open a company. You could pay a flat amount of tax. You could prove that you have wealth. You could prove that you have income. You could buy some real estate. All different ways to do it. Some of those ways to get residence are very inexpensive. Whether it's going to Albania and buying pretty much any piece of real estate, whether it's going to some of the Latin American countries and just saying, hey, here's my monthly income. I'm not going to be a burden on you. Just let me come in. Those are some pretty affordable ways. What a golden visa is a more expensive investor visa where basically they are making the terms, in some cases, easier, where you don't have to live in the country for 6 months, for example, to keep the residence permit active. In some cases, you may only need to be there 1 day or 7 days a year or something like that. In some cases, it's faster, like in Portugal, to get citizenship without having to live there all the time. So it's very attractive in terms of people who have the money to invest. You don't have to change your whole lifestyle the way you might have to keep some of the cheaper residence permits active. There are cheaper residence permits where you don't have to live there. We call them paper residence. But some of them that are cheaper do actually require you to change your lifestyle in some way. Golden visas generally don't. And so you will invest, let's say, 250,000 euros in real estate in Greece, or 350 to 500 in Portugal generally, or 500,000 in Spain. And so the media has gone around and they've started, coining this term. They've giving other countries visa programs this term. So, the UK is a bond investor program. Some media outlets call that a golden visa, even though it's not really a golden visa. It functions somewhat the same way. Okay, so golden visas are great for getting immigration benefits. And again, in some countries, you can work towards citizenship, sometimes with relaxed criteria. So you can get a residence permit and then not immediately. It's not a citizenship by investment program. You're not getting a passport in 6 months, but 5, 6 years, 7, 10 years down the road, you might qualify for a second citizenship as well. So you might kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And golden visas are generally, when they talk about golden visa, it's generally in a European country. So again, Portugal, Spain, Latvia, Greece, Ireland is another one they sometimes apply the term to with their investor program. Okay. Now, here's the deal. Does having a golden visa save you on taxes? The answer is it might, but not necessarily. And so, what I've learned being in this offshore world, there are some interesting characters, to say the least, in this world. And some of the things that I've heard from Americans in particular is, hey, get a visa, get a residence permit in Panama, i.e. the now going away Friendly Nations visa. And that Friendly Nations visa, you only have to be there 1 day every 2 years. And as long as you have that residence permit, that visa, you can then say, hey, I'm a Panama taxpayer, and you don't have to pay the U.S. anymore. Utter nonsense, right? The U.S. has a number of provisions, such if you're a business owner, the foreign earned income exclusion. There's numerous different ways you can legally reduce your taxes as an American. Namely, if you have active income, you can move to Puerto Rico. That's better for business owners as well as investors, people with passive income, capital gains, that kind of thing. But there aren't as many options for Americans. And if you're going to qualify for those incentives, you actually need to leave the United States. So just getting, let's say, a Portugal golden visa and meeting the immigration criteria of basically 7 days a year, that's great. That will satisfy Portugal. That will keep your residence permit active, but it's not going to keep any country's taxman at bay. You don't get to go and spend 7 days a year in Portugal, go back and spend 358 days in Atlanta or Adelaide or Birmingham and say, oh, golden visa holder, don't have to pay. Now, if you want to move to the country of your golden visa, can you reduce your taxes? The answer is it depends. You're generally with these programs going to have to move there, okay? There are tax residence programs that, depending on where you're from, it's harder for Americans, but depending on where you're from, you may be able to legally reduce your taxes by only living in that country for 15 or 30 or 60 days, that kind of thing. Generally, these golden visa programs are not going to be that, right? They may have tax incentives, but they're going to want you to spend generally 6 months to qualify for those tax incentives, okay? So the immigration and the tax can function separately. You can say, all I care about is the immigration benefits. We've got many Americans coming and getting golden visas so they can travel to Europe. Maybe they're working towards citizenship. They're buying property there that they would have bought anyway, whatever. If they live in the U.S. most of the time, they're not getting the tax savings, but they do get the immigration benefits. Nothing wrong with that. Again, if you want the tax benefits, generally looking at spending a significant part of the year there. Portugal has the non-habitual residence program. Not bad for many people, but I have called it the Swiss cheese of tax exemptions. There's a number of things to be aware of. It is not perfect. It is not just move here, change nothing, pay zero. It is not that simple. Portugal is very crypto friendly, and so that's where crypto investors, you might want to live there 6 months a year, especially if you're not an American and you could just move your tax home to Portugal, for example. What we know about Americans, we've talked about a lot over the years, Americans always have a tax home in the U.S., and so it matters about how do you move between the two systems, whereas non-Americans, at least for now, can simply go and change their tax home. Portugal, for crypto investors, not bad. Greece is another option. Italy, we talked about several months ago, improved their golden visa program. Still not a huge seller, but those countries both have tax incentives. If you're coming in, if you haven't lived there, you can pay a lump sum amount of tax. And so that could be interesting. Again, for Americans, that's going to be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging with the systems working together. But you can, get tax incentives. Ireland, the UK have certain tax incentives if you're getting one of their investor visas. And so the idea of, again, getting an immigration product to solve a tax problem isn't going to work. As you can see, having a golden visa in one of these European countries allows you to be there. You're no longer just a tourist. So if you want to go and live there 365 days a year, or 9 months a year, or 6 months a year, you have the ability to do that. There's nobody counting, hey, when's your 90 days over? You can live there. Now, if you don't want to be a taxpayer there and you just want the immigration benefits and you just want the travel and all that, then you have to make sure you don't become tax resident in these countries because, Europe has a number of tax provisions beyond just spend 6 months. There could be other ways you could become taxed. If you want to avoid that, make sure you get proper tax planning. If you would like to be a taxpayer in this European country, then okay, now you have the means to do that because now you have the means to be more than just a tourist and you can spend the amount of time and you can develop those connections to set up your tax home and then potentially, depending on where you're from, break free from where you're currently being taxed. So golden visa gets you in the door, but it's not a catch-all. It's not the be-all, end-all to solve your tax problems. It is part of the solution potentially, but you have to separate tax and immigration, realize when to separate them, and realize when to bring them together. So don't just think getting a golden visa solves your tax problems. This is one area that people get confused about. Citizenship, residence, tax residence, they are all different. You have to use them each appropriately. Again, you may have those three things in three different places, or more than three different places. They may all be in one place. Obviously, if you live in the United States and you were born there, you're a U.S. citizen, you're paying tax in the U.S., all those three things are in one. When you look at the world of nomad capitalists, we start looking at, how do we go where we're treated best by making that more than one place? That's where you need to make sure that you're separating things, but make sure you're not getting into this trap that simply having an immigration product reduces your tax bill. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.